So imagine this scenario, right? An executive has been working relentlessly for months. I mean, sacrificing his weekends, barely sleeping. And today, it finally pays off. His boss calls him into the office and hands him a check for a $100,000 bonus.
Oh, wow. That is a massive payout.
Right, it's unbelievable, literally life-changing success. He is ecstatic. So he leaves the office, drives home, floating on air, walks through his front door, and within, I don't know, 10 minutes, he starts the most vicious, explosive argument with his wife that they've had in 12 years of marriage.
Just total devastation,
Now,
going from pure ecstasy to absolute agony in the space of like a single afternoon commute.
exactly.
Or consider another scenario. A couple with a net worth exceeding $1 billion. They possess more money than they could reasonably spend in 10 lifetimes.
Right.
And yet they are locked in this screaming match in their designer kitchen, practically burning their entire relationship to the ground. And the trigger. One of them bought the $7 organic peanut butter instead of the $3 generic brand.
I mean, it sounds totally absurd when you hear it out loud, but before you blame, laziness, bad luck, or other people, ask this. Why does peace sometimes feel more dangerous than chaos?
Yeah, that is the real question.
Why do people sometimes ruin things just when life finally starts going well? Welcome to Knowledge Reloaded, where old ideas meet new minds. We are looking at an incredibly powerful psychological concept today. We're pulling from Karen Horney's 1937 masterpiece, The Neurotic Personality of Our Time, and Gay Hendricks' 2009 framework in The Big Leap.
Two very different eras, but they connect so perfectly.
They really do. And the core thesis we are unpacking in this deep dive is this. Consciously, you want success, love, peace, visibility, health, money, opportunity. But unconsciously, self-sabotage is often the mind choosing familiar pain over unfamiliar freedom.
It is a massive disconnect.
Yeah.
And to understand the mechanism behind it, like the actual how and why this happens, we have to start with Hendricks' concept of the upper limit problem.
Which is such a brilliant way to frame it.
It really is. The theory is that every single one of us possesses this hidden internal thermostat. But this thermostat isn't tracking temperature. It is tracking exactly how much positive energy, success, love, or abundance we feel safe experiencing at any given time.
Right, and just like the physical thermostat in your hallway, when the temperature gets too high, when you get that promotion or you finally have a weekend with zero drama, your internal system gets alarmed by the unfamiliar heat.
It's like, whoa, this is too much.
Exactly. It kicks on to cool things down. You unconsciously trigger self-sabotage to drag yourself back down to a familiar, manageable state of discomfort. Hendricks essentially describes it as an allergy to feeling good.
And I want to dig into that allergy concept because it's not just a metaphor, right? It manifests physiologically.
Mm-hmm.
Hendricks points out that human beings often have a very narrow window of tolerance for positive energy.
We really do.
You might feel good for 3 minutes or maybe 3 days, and then the nervous system demands a correction. Your brain starts scanning for threats. You generate sudden guilt, or, you pick a fight over peanut butter.
Or you suddenly start obsessing over a hypothetical problem 5 years in the future.
Yes, you invent a crisis.
There is this incredibly vivid story Hendricks shares from his own life that perfectly illustrates the physical reality of this. He calls it the diet trance. So years ago, he had been on a strict diet for 30 days and lost 35 pounds.
That's a huge accomplishment.
Massive. So he is walking down the street in Cambridge, Massachusetts, feeling like $1 million, completely vibrating with this new positive energy. Then he looks over and sees a family sitting in a shop eating ice cream.
I see where this is going.
Yeah. And he describes going into an absolute trance. He walks into the shop, loses his presence of mind entirely, orders a massive ice cream sundae, and eats the whole thing.
Which, neurologically speaking, probably flooded his brain with dopamine for about 20 minutes.
Exactly. The sugar is coursing through him, the dopamine hits, and he feels great in the immediate moment. But 20 minutes later, he is walking down the street and gets hit with the worst stomachache of his life.
Oh, man.
He literally doubles over on the sidewalk. Now, the easy explanation is to say, well, he just lacked willpower, but Hendricks realized it was a physical manifestation of his upper limit being hit.
His body literally rejected the success.
Yes. His body and mind could not tolerate the sustained elevation of feeling healthy and vibrant, so his system pulled him back down to a state of pain and physical discomfort that he recognized and, knew how to navigate.
And it happens professionally, too. We see this phenomenon that Hendricks calls the post-Oprah flu.
Oh, I love this example.
It's so common. People will work their entire lives for a massive goal. They finally get that life-altering phone call. Maybe they're invited onto a massive national platform like Oprah, and that very night, they magically develop a severe cold or a debilitating flu.
It's wild.
Their physical body literally revolts against the sudden influx of success.
But I know how your mind works, and I can practically hear you winding up to challenge this. Is this really always an unconscious upper limit? I mean, life happens, right? Germs exist, bad luck happens.
Thank you. My skeptical alarm bells are absolutely ringing here.
Yeah.
We have to be very careful not to label every single setback as some deep unconscious allergy to success.
Fair point.
If we aren't careful, self-sabotage becomes this catch-all term that just blames the individual for everything. Sometimes what looks like self-sabotage is actually extreme burnout.
Yeah, it's true.
Sometimes it is the result of terrible external systems, a complete lack of support, or sheer exhausting survival pressure. You might get sick before a big presentation, not because you fear success, but because you've been sleeping 4 hours a night for a month to prepare for it.
That is a crucial distinction. We shouldn't ignore the physical reality of exhaustion. But even when it is an internal block, it's not necessarily a malfunction, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think of your mind like a computer. When a computer program crashes, it doesn't crash because it is afraid of running smoothly.
Right.
It crashes because there's a fundamental conflict in the code. You are trying to install a brand new, highly advanced operating system which represents your new success, your new peaceful relationship, your sudden wealth.
But you're trying to run it on old hardware.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You are running it on outdated, completely incompatible hardware. And that old hardware is your childhood conditioning and trauma. The new operating system demands more processing power and emotional bandwidth than the old hardware can handle.
So it just shuts down.
So the system crashes to protect the motherboard.
I love that analogy, and it perfectly explains why we need the older psychological voice today. If our thermostat is set so low, or our hardware is so outdated, we have to look at why it was programmed that way in the first place.
Which brings us back to 1937.
Right, to Karen Horney. She presented a radical departure from the dominant psychological theories of her time. Freud argued that human beings were fundamentally driven by a search for pleasure. But Horney, looking at how a culture and early environments actually shape our nervous systems, argued something entirely different.
She flipped the whole script.
She did. She said, we are not driven by a search for pleasure. We are driven by a desperate, consuming need for safety.
Safety is the foundational operating system. And she rooted this in a concept she called basic anxiety.
Which is so much deeper than just normal stress.
Oh, absolutely. This isn't just everyday stress. This is the profound, overwhelming feeling a child develops, often due to indifferent parenting, a lack of genuine warmth, emotional unpredictability, or harsh environmental pressures of being isolated, helpless, and endangered in a world that is fundamentally hostile.
It's that terrifying pre-verbal belief that you are entirely alone and completely defenseless.
Exactly.
And imagine carrying that terror inside your little body. It is entirely too much for a child's nervous system to bear. So to survive this crushing anxiety, a person has to develop protective strategies.
They have to figure out how to navigate the hostile world.
Yes. Horney identified 3 main defensive moves that people adopt. The first is moving toward people. This is compliance. In a modern context, this is extreme people-pleasing, chronic perfectionism, and shrinking yourself down.
You take on extra projects at work until you collapse, constantly seeking approval so that you won't be abandoned.
Right. The underlying logic of moving toward is, if I'm perfectly compliant and helpful, you won't hurt me.
And the second strategy is moving against people. This is aggression. It is the compulsive need for power, control, and prestige.
Which perfectly explains the billionaires fighting over the peanut butter.
Exactly. It has nothing to do with the money. The underlying logic here is that if you dominate everyone else, if you are always superior and control the environment, you can never be caught off guard and hurt.
And the third strategy is moving away from people. This is withdrawal. You put up massive emotional walls, you numb out, you ghost people, and you isolate yourself.
The survival math there is simple. If I never depend on anyone, I can never be rejected or betrayed.
Right. Now, in a healthy state, you have fluid access to all 3 of these approaches. You can connect and compromise, you can assert fierce boundaries, or you can take quiet time for yourself depending on what a specific situation requires.
But when your underlying hardware is driven by basic anxiety, These moves become rigid. They become neurotic. You rely entirely on one single strategy to keep you safe, and you apply it to every situation, even when it's actively destroying your life.
This framework completely changes how we should view our own failures. It means that self-sabotage is not a weakness. It is not you being lazy or broken or fundamentally flawed.
Not at all.
It is a highly effective protective strategy that once kept you alive emotionally. It protected you when you were vulnerable and didn't have any other tools. But the tragedy is that the armor you put on to survive childhood has rusted shut.
That's a great way to put it.
It now acts as a prison. It's the mind preferring the safe chaos it knows over the terrifying vulnerability of peace.
And we still see this everywhere today, you know?
Yeah.
It just wears modern clothes. Horney talked about how people will narcotize this anxiety to avoid feeling it.
Oh, narcotize. What a word.
Right. Today, we narcotize through chronic busyness. It's the obsession with the hustle. It's doom scrolling. It's checking your email a million times a day. We stay in a state of constant low-level chaos to avoid feeling the profound discomfort of our own potential.
Because stillness feels like an attack on the nervous system.
Exactly.
So if our hardware is rigidly wired for safety at all costs, what are the specific perceived dangers that trigger us to pull the plug on our own happiness?
Well, Hendricks argues that when we try to grow, we hit invisible walls, core fears that trigger that upper limit thermostat.
Let's look closely at a couple of them. The first is the fear of outshining. This is the deep-seated, often completely unconscious guilt that if you become too successful, you will make others feel small.
The mechanism there is fascinating. The fear isn't of the success itself. The fear is of the isolation that success might bring. You shrink your own potential so that you don't eclipse your siblings, outpace your parents' achievements, or leave your friends feeling insecure.
You are literally choosing belonging over actualization.
Exactly.
Another massive one is feeling like a burden. This is particularly painful because it's the tragic early belief that your very existence takes up too much space.
So when things start going well, when you start taking up the spotlight or asserting your needs in a relationship, you sabotage it. You fundamentally believe that your success is placing an unfair weight on the people around you.
There is also the fear of disloyalty, the anxiety that reaching your highest potential means abandoning your roots or your community.
But the one that I think underpins almost everything is the fear of the fundamental flaw. This is the terror that you are secretly inherently broken. And if you reach true undeniable success, the visibility will put a massive spotlight on you, and everyone will finally see the fraud you deeply believe you are.
Oh, that fear of being exposed connects so perfectly to Horney's work. She talked about the tyranny of the shoulds. To protect ourselves from that feeling of being flawed, we construct this impossible, idealized version of ourselves.
The perfect self.
Right. We tell ourselves, I should always be kind, or I should never feel angry, or I should always be perfectly productive.
But the actual self, the real messy, complex human being, can never live up to the idealized self. So the gap between who we are and who we think we should be becomes a source of constant, agonizing pressure. We exhaust ourselves trying to bridge a gap that doesn't actually exist.
Which leads us directly into what Hendricks identifies as the ultimate behavioral trap. He categorizes how we spend our time and energy into 4 zones. I won't linger on the bottom 2. The zone of incompetence, where you're doing things you're bad at, and the zone of competence, where you're doing things anyone else could do just as well.
Right. The real danger lies in the top 2. The zone of excellence and the zone of genius.
And logic tells you the goal is the zone of excellence, right? In this zone, you are highly competent, you are well paid, you get great feedback, and you are completely indispensable to your family or your company. People rely on you.
But Hendricks argues that the zone of excellence is actually the ultimate hiding place for the anxious mind. It is a velvet-lined trap.
A velvet-lined trap. I love that.
You look successful on the outside, so no one questions your choices. But on the inside, your soul is quietly being consumed. You are not operating in your zone of genius, which is doing the exact thing you are uniquely suited to do, the thing that feels like timeless flow and brings you deep fulfillment.
The psychological mechanism keeping us trapped there is brilliant in a very dark way. I was thinking about the crab in a bucket analogy.
Oh yeah, usually when we use that metaphor, we're talking about other people. You try to climb out of the bucket to success, and the other crabs pull you back down.
Right. But the shocking realization when you synthesize Horney and Hendricks is that you are the crab pulling yourself back into the bucket.
Why do we do that, though? Why pull ourselves away from our own genius?
Because leaping into the zone of genius exposes you. It requires you to drop the rusted protective armor. It forces you to confront that terrifying gap between your actual self and your idealized self.
Ah, I see. In the zone of excellence, you are playing a role you've mastered. You can still control the narrative.
Exactly. In the zone of genius, you have to be fully vulnerable. And as Horney taught us, your basic anxiety views vulnerability as a mortal threat.
Okay, so we see the code in the matrix, we see the thermostat, the old hardware, the invisible walls, and the velvet trap of excellence. How do we actually stop pulling ourselves back down?
Well, it requires a massive shift in how we process our own failures. It starts by moving from blame to curiosity.
Hendricks notes that when couples argue, or when we blow up a project, it is almost always a race to occupy the victim position.
Yes, everyone wants to be the victim.
Because if you are the victim of circumstance or the victim of someone else's bad behavior, you don't have to take responsibility for your own creative expansion.
To escape that victim trap, you have to claim 100% responsibility for your life. But, and this is the absolute most crucial part, you have to do it completely without shame.
Right. It's not about finding fault or calling yourself an idiot. It's about taking objective responsibility. Hendricks introduces a highly practical tool for this called wonder questions.
I love wonder questions. This completely changes the internal dialogue. Instead of beating yourself up when you ruin a good moment, you treat your self-sabotage like a neutral physics problem.
So like when that executive ruined his night after getting the $100,000 bonus, a standard reaction is, why am I such a jerk? Why do I ruin everything?
Exactly. But a wonder question removes the morality. A wonder question asks, why was it inevitable that I created this specific setback at this exact moment of success?
What part of my nervous system needed to start this fight in order to feel safe?
There's an incredible story Hendricks shares about a man who experienced a massive, traumatic marital blow-up. His wife had an affair. Now, on paper, society would say, it is entirely her fault, you are the victim.
Right, 100%.
But Hendricks challenged him with a wonder question. Why was it inevitable that this happened? And after sitting with it, the man realized that when he was 1 year old, his mother had run off and abandoned his family.
Oh, wow.
He had spent 35 years carrying the unconscious, deeply wired belief that women will always leave you. So he unconsciously chose a partner and created dynamics that would eventually validate that underlying fear.
That is profound. And it demonstrates one of the most confronting quotes from Hendricks. Your results will always tell you what your intentions are.
Ooh, that's a hard truth.
It really is. If you repeatedly end up in chaotic relationships, or if you repeatedly get sick the moment a big opportunity arises on some unconscious level, that chaos is serving an intention. It is successfully keeping you safe from something that your old hardware considers scarier, like true intimacy, or the pressure of visibility.
And dealing with that underlying fear is the whole game. There is a quote from the pioneering psychologist Fritz Perls that completely reframes this physical panic. He said, "Fear is only excitement without the breath."
Think about the physiology of that. That physical sensation of hitting your upper limit, the tight chest, the racing heart, the shallow breathing, it is intense.
Extremely intense.
But biologically, fear and excitement are almost identical states of nervous system arousal. It is just conscious desire battling unconscious resistance. When you feel that panic setting in right as things get good, you don't have to blow up your life to make it stop. You just need to breathe into the physical sensation and allow your nervous system to translate the fear into excitement.
But here's the disturbing part. What if the chaos is not the accident, but the comfort zone? What if you are not afraid of failure, but afraid of who you become if you succeed?
It forces you to realize that the resistance you feel isn't a malfunction. It's a bodyguard that doesn't know the war is over.
That perfectly synthesizes everything we've unpacked today. We have to update the hardware. Self-sabotage may be the mind choosing familiar pain over unfamiliar freedom.
Sometimes the old survival strategy becomes the new prison.
Peace can feel threatening when chaos is what taught you how to survive. The question is not only what do I want, but what part of me feels unsafe receiving it.
What if the life you want does not feel peaceful at first because your nervous system does not recognize it yet? We have to remember a vital realization. The instructions for how to get out of the box are written on the outside of the box. You cannot read them while you are hiding inside your anxiety.
You have to take the leap and tolerate the unfamiliarity of feeling good.
So, we want to turn it over to you. What is one good thing in your life that you may be making harder because ease feels unfamiliar?
Drop your thoughts in the comments.
If this episode made you think differently, feel deeply, or take action, then the knowledge is reloaded.
See you next time.